Hello learners. So in the last lecture or part 1 we did the sentence verb agreement, and today we are going to start with part 2 of sentence correction, that is parallelism. We will be studying the concepts and do some practice questions. So let's move on. Now what is parallelism? Parallelism means trying to make the structures of the sentence similar. Now, if I talk about, or can you recall what parallel lines are? So, likewise, we are talking about parallelism in sentence correction. Parallelism is trying to make the structure of the sentences as similar. In other words, parallelism refers to similarity of two or more words, phrases, or clauses in the construction of a sentence. I think you will understand more about it by the help of some examples. So first let us see the type of errors. The type of errors in parallelism can be of two kinds. First is parallel structures and second is parallel comparison. So parallel structure means Mohit's hobbies are singing, playing and to read books. You can just by reading it tell me that what do you find incorrect here. This is singing, this is playing, but this is to read books. What if we write reading here? So when we write it as Mohit's hobbies are singing, playing and reading, now this sentence is in a parallel structure. I hope you are getting my point, that not to write to read books, we write reading. Now what about parallel comparison? Bangalore's weather is better than Mumbai. Now the correct statement would be, what is comparison? When we are comparing one thing with another. Right? There is a comparison when we compare. So here we are comparing Bangalore's weather with Mumbai. So the correct statement would be, Bangalore's weather is better than Mumbai's, not Mumbai. Or Bangalore's weather is better than Mumbai's weather. So these are the correct statements. So what does parallel means? That we have to bring these sentences in a similar structure. Alright. Moving on to what is the approach to follow. It is recommended that you must follow the following approach while solving parallelism questions. So what is the step 1? Step 1 is to identify whether it's a parallel structure or a parallel comparison question. We just did the two types of errors in parallel structures, where you have to write in the similar form, and the second one is comparison, when you have to compare one thing with another. Alright. So identify whether it's a parallel structure or a comparison question. Step 2 is, if it's a parallel structure question, we are talking about parallel structure question. Check and categorize the elements to be made parallel. You have to categorize the elements which have to be made parallel in the form of a noun or verb or adjective or adverb. Make sure all elements are parallel and uniform. Just like we did, it should be singing or reading, dancing, playing, or the other way around, that to sing, to play, to read, and so on. So you have to see what elements are to be made parallel. They can be in the form of noun, verb, adjective or adverb. Now what is the step 3? Step 3 is if it's a comparison question. Here we are talking about if it's a structure question, parallel structure question, and second if it is a comparison question. Check for words like as, like, than, then, that, which, etc. We know that when we are comparing one thing with other, we use words like as, like, than, then, that, which, and so on. So if you find words like these, that means it is a comparison question. Then you can easily take out the errors and make it a correct statement. I hope this is clear to you all. Now, how does these approaches we just studied or these steps we just saw, how can we apply it in the questions? So, like in the sentence verb agreement, you can remember that we did the structures. We talked about some structures there, right? Here in parallelism, we'll talk about the question type. There we talked about some structures, and here we are talking about some question types. So question type 1 is uniformity in tenses. As a general rule, all the verbs in the same sentence must be in the same tense. You have studied in this in your primary, secondary classes, and you know what tenses are. And I am very sure that you also know that the verbs in the same sentence must be in the same tense. If we are talking in past, all the verbs are in past. If we talk about present, it should be in present or in future. So, the sentences should be in one form or in one tense or the same tense only. Let's talk about some example here. He went home and was playing chess. The correct statement would be he went home and played chess. Now, was playing is continuous. We know tenses are of 4 forms: simple tense, continuous tense, present perfect, and present perfect continuous. So here went home is simple tense, was playing is continuous. The correct statement would be the verb went is in simple tense and played chess is also in simple past tense. That means we have to avoid the other forms of tenses. You have to avoid them. The logic is present and past participle of verbs can be parallel depending on the context. Now, the present and past participle of verbs. We all know that we know the form of verbs. So, the present and past participle of verbs can be parallel depending on the context. So, context is important. For example, the baseball team gave up 7 unearned runs in the second innings of today's game and still are losing in the 7th inning. So here we are talking about the baseball team gave up, right? 7 unearned runs in the second innings of today's match and still are losing in the 7th inning. So we are talking about past as well as present. But we just did that they should be in the same tense. But here what we talk about is context. If the context is right or the parallelism depends on the context of the sentence. Depending on the context, the sentence can have past as well as present participle of verbs. Gave up and are still losing. We have used past tense also and present tense also because of the context. So this is what uniformity intenses means. Let's move on to the second question type, that is elements separated by comma. Now the incorrect statement is the reasons why Rahul could not join IIMA. Now what are we talking about? We are talking about the reasons. So what are they? Insufficiency of funds, responsibility of supporting his family, and he was in need of full-time employment. So these are different elements, like insufficiency of funds is first element, separated by comma is the second element, that the responsibility of supporting his family, and third element is he was in need of full-time employment. Now if we see the correct statement, the reasons why Rahul could not join IIMA were insufficiency of funds, responsibility of supporting his family, and the need to take up full-time employment. Do you think he is required here? We know we are talking about Rahul. We know that we are talking about Rahul. So is it necessary to again refer he here? No, it is not. So the correct statement is and the need to take up full-time employment. We don't have to repeat when the elements are separated by a comma. The incorrect statement is your excuses are boring, childish, and show how ignorant you are. Why does you are is here? We know we are talking about your excuses only. Your excuses are boring, are childish, and ignorant. That's it. Why do we have to write show how ignorant you are? We are just talking about your excuses, and when we are separating the elements by comma, we don't need these words. So the correct statement would be your excuses are boring, childish, and ignorant. As simple as that. That's it. You have to understand that when we are talking about the elements that are separated by a comma, we don't have to mention you or his name or he or she again and again. One time we know what we are talking about and we do not have to repeat it. Now the third question type is comparisons. We are talking about comparisons. So like versus as. Like versus as. Like is used when comparing similar qualities of two nouns. When you have to compare similar qualities of two nouns. For example, the eagle, like the vulture, is a bird of prey, which means that eagle is like the vulture and they both are the birds of prey. So this is where we use like. Now if I give you an example, let's say I say any of your friend or any of your family member is going to the market and you tell them, bring a chocolate like fruit and nut from the market. Now what do you mean? You mean that bring any chocolate that is similar to fruit and nut. You are not specific, but you are saying anything similar to fruit and nut will work. Like if you elaborate, fruit and nut, it can be from Cadbury brand or it can be from Amul brand or any other brand. So what just you say is that any chocolate, but it should be similar to fruit and nut. So that is where we use like. Now as is used as a linking word in a comparison. As is a linking word. It can also be used to introduce a comparative clause. Now, example is, he went to Harvard to do his MBA as his father had done before him. What we are talking about when we are comparing, or when we are just using it as a word to introduce a comparative clause. So this is the difference between like and as. Like is when we are comparing similar words, and as is used as a linking word in comparison. I hope you are clear with this. Question type 4. Active voice and passive voice mismatch. I hope that you all know what is active voice and what is passive voice. So the logic here is, if the first verb in the sentence is an active voice, then all the verbs that follow it should be in active voice and vice versa. If the first verb V1 is in active voice, then V2 or V3, the other verbs in the sentence, must also be in the active form. Vice versa, if V1 is in passive voice, all the other verbs should also be in passive voice. So this is what it means. Now we know active voices of any sentence. Any sentence has a subject, a verb, and an object. So in active voice, the order of the sentence is that first there is subject, then the verb, and followed by object. But in passive voice, it is object, then verb, and then the subject. So this is the order of a passive voice. If we talk about any example here, it is like, I was playing in the park. So I was is the subject. Who was playing? We know that when we have to identify a subject, we ask the question as who or what. So who was playing in the park? I was playing. Sorry, not was. I was playing. So I is the subject. Was is the verb. And playing in the park, what we were doing? What was I doing? I was playing in the park is the object. If I write that any other sentence, let's say the guitar was played by me. So who was playing? I was playing, me was playing, so me is the subject. Was is our verb, was played is our verb. The guitar is our object. So the order here is object, verb, subject. So this is in the passive voice and this is in the active voice. If we talk about the example written here is, my mother baked the pasta and the oven was cleaned by her. In this sentence, my mother, who baked the pasta? My mother. What did she do? Bake. The object is pasta. So, subject, verb, object. And here, the oven was cleaned by her. Who cleaned? Her. This is subject. Was cleaned is the verb. What was cleaned? The oven is the object. We just read or we just learned the concept that in a sentence, if first verb is in the active voice, then all the verbs that follow it should also be in the active voice. So this is the incorrect statement. The correct one would be, my mother baked the pasta and cleaned the oven. So both the elements are in active voice. So this is what we are talking about, that in a statement, if a verb is an active voice, then the followed verbs should also be in the active voice. If the first verb is in the passive voice, then all the other verbs should also be in the passive voice. Now the next question type is correlative conjunctions and idiomatic expressions. So we know what idioms are, and we know what conjunctions are. Conjunctions are the joining words. So what are correlative conjunctions? Conjunctions or joining words which always come together. Which always come together. Like you can take an example that with dal always comes the rice, or with paneer always comes the naan, right? So these are correlative conjunctions. With not only but also will also be there. Whenever you write to must also be present. With no sooner we use than. With hardly or scarcely we use when. And with both we use and. So these are very important to learn. You must know that whenever you write not only, you have to write but also. With to, you have to write to. With no sooner, you have to write than. With hardly or scarcely, you have to write when. And with both, you have to write and. Also, some idiomatic expressions such as prefer to, mistake for, to think of as, enable to, etc. require parallel structure. They also require parallel structure. We know that the elements of the statement should be similar. So this is what we talk about. Let us take an example. The incorrect statement is, I not only like fruits but also vegetables. So with not only, they have written but also for vegetables. Not only should be used for fruits. It is like the correct statement is, I like not only fruits but also vegetables. So what is not correct? It is written I not only like fruits. This should be I like not only fruits but also vegetables. So you can see the difference here, right? So you have to be very careful while writing the answers. So the last question type is gerunds, infinitives and participles. We have talked about gerunds in the subject verb agreement. Alright, gerund is the verb plus ing which act as a noun. Like dancing is my hobby. So dancing is a gerund. So I say cooking is my hobby, or singing is my hobby. So the verb with ing which acts as a noun becomes our gerund. Alright. So infinitive. Infinitive is when we write to with the verb. When we write to with the verb. Here we were writing ing. Here we are writing to with the verb. Like I like to read, sing and dance. So I like to with the verb becomes our infinitive. For example, walking to the place of work is easier for me than to take the bus. So than to take the bus here is what? It is not right. can I write here that with walking, it was written in the VING form? Can you just remember that we did the parallel structures, that they have to be in the same similar structure? So here it is verb plus ing, and here it is written 2 plus verb. Here it is written 2 plus verb. So what it should be? It should be than taking the bus. Alright, because we know about the parallel structures in which the structure, the statement should be in the similar format. So with VING, that is walking, it should be talking. And to walk and to take the bus. Alright. Verb participles. Word participles. First is present participle. In present participle, it is verb plus ing. That is reading, singing, walking, writing, dancing, cooking, so on. But in the past participle, it is verb plus ed. We talk about sentences basically here. That is walked, trained, drowned, cooked, danced, whatever. But it is verb with ed is our past participle, and in present it is v plus ing. Alright. Now let us take an example. If I write, we are ready with our jackets in case it should rain. Let me write it here. We are ready with our jackets in case it should rain. Now, is it a correct statement? No, it is not. Because here I am writing we are, which means we are talking in present, and with our jackets in case it should rain. Should is in the future tense. So is it the right statement? No, it would be we are ready with our jackets in case it rains. In case it rains, and should here should not be present, as should is the future form and the are the first verb is present. So all the verbs should also be in the present form or past form if it depends on the context. So every question type revolves around one another, but you have to be very careful with these rules such that you have to solve the questions which will be going to be present in your exams. So now we will just do some practice questions to see that how much you have learned from this or how much concepts you have gathered. So the first question is from beginners level, just to check how much concept you have learned. Directions: the sentence below has been divided into 4 parts. Identify the part having an error. If no part has an error, mark 5. So the sentence is divided into 4 parts, and if there is no error, you have to mark 5, or you have to mark whichever has the error. The question is right. Here is not of autonomy, but devolution of power to grassroots level. Now the question is right. Here is not of autonomy is right, but devolution of, no, it should be but of devolution, power to grassroots level. Right? So it should not be but devotion of, it should be but of devolution. So third part is incorrect. It has an error. Right? The second question is from intermediate level. So the question is, in each question there are 4 sentences. Identify the sentences that is or are correct in terms of grammar and usage. So likewise, you have to tell which statement has an error and which has not. We will just observe the statements first. Anija likes reading novels, playing badminton, and to listen to music. I am very hopeful that you people should know by now that what is incorrect in this statement. It is reading novels, verb and ing, playing badminton, verb and ing, and here it is 2 plus verb. So we have to bring it back to a similar, we have to bring it back to a similar structure. So this is incorrect. It should be listening to music. So first one is incorrect. The distance from Bangalore to Kochi is greater than Bangalore to Chennai. The thing here is that the distance from Bangalore to Kochi is greater from what? Bangalore to Chennai. What is greater in Bangalore to Chennai? It is the distance. So you have to mention here also that the distance from Bangalore to Kochi is greater than distance of Bangalore to Chennai. This just means that Bangalore is greater to Chennai, but the distance is greater. So this statement is also incorrect. Here we talked about parallel comparisons. Here we were talking about parallel structures, and here we are talking about parallel comparisons. Third is, new economic regulations implemented in our country facilitated OCBs to invest in stocks, start businesses, and export goods and services. So what it is basically, we are separating the elements with a comma, and we haven't mentioned the words which should not be present here. We have written in stocks, start businesses, and export goods and services. So all are similar in structure. So this statement has no errors. The fourth one is, the number of employees working in the company X is higher than the employees working in the company Y. Now, what is higher than the employees working in the company? The number. Here we are talking about number of employees. So here we should also mention the number of employees. We are talking about comparisons, parallel comparisons. Where is the number here? So this is also incorrect. Now if I have to choose the option from here, it is C and D. The only correct option is C, that is third. So B, that is C only. Here it should be A, B, C, D. There is some typing error here. We are sorry for this, but it should be A, B, C and D. So C only is the option, the correct option. So this type of questions can be asked, and you are clear that what are parallel structures, what are parallel comparisons, and all the question types. So now you are good to go to the advanced level. Let's solve a question of advanced level now. So the question is, in the question there are 5 sentences. Identify the sentence or sentences that are correct in terms of grammar and usage. Unsolicited electronic junk mail, also termed spam, has hurt companies by both draining company resources used to combat the problem and diminishing employee productivity. Now we know we are using what we are using. We are using conjunctions, that is both, and with both we use and. But here just read the sentence. Has hurt companies by both draining company resources. This means we are talking about draining company resources used to combat the problem and diminishing employee productivity. but it should be by draining both company resources used to combat the problem and diminishing employee productivity. So both should be placed here and not here. It should be by draining both company resources used to combat the problem and diminishing employee productivity. So first is we'll cancel out the statements which have both draining. It should be draining both. So both draining, both draining, both draining. We are left with options B and C. So let us just read that. Draining both company resources used to combat the problem and diminishing employee productivity. This is correct. Draining both company resources used to combat the problem and diminishing how productive its employees are. Now these are unnecessary words we do not need. We learned this in concepts that we do not need the unnecessary statements or words. We are happy or we are sufficient just with diminishing employee productivity. So the correct option is option B. So here we come to an end with the second part, that is parallelism. Until then, you can go to our app or website. You can check all other categories, all other topics which are available for verbal ability. You can also unlock all the logged videos, lectures, and give topic-wise tests to know how much concepts you have cleared. I will see you in the next video, in the upcoming videos, in which we will be doing the part 3 for our sentence correction. Thank you.